Church, today we're going to be in Acts chapter 20, but before we get into it, I've got a very personal question for you that only you can answer, really. It's this. Has there ever been a time in your life where you have fallen asleep in church? No, I'm just kidding. I hope you haven't. But today we're going to see where that does happen to someone. And so let's set it up. Paul is teaching in the city of Troas. People are gathered, and he knows he's leaving the very next day, so he has a lot to say in a little time. And so he is going to just get it all out. The Bible says he's preaching and teaching until midnight. Verse 8 is a funny verse to me because it says that the room where Paul was teaching was filled with lamps. And the reason that's funny to me is now we're going to meet Eutychus, this young man that falls asleep. And it's almost like the Bible saying, how tired was this guy? The room was fully lit and yet he still falls asleep. And that's what happens. He's sitting in this window on the third floor. And we see that he falls into a deep sleep. He's not just dozing off like you might see a wife kind of nudge her husband in church and says, wake up, I can hear you snoring. No. He literally falls into a deep sleep, so much so that before he even knows it, he has fallen out the window. And wouldn't you love just to see what all happens in this moment? I can imagine we hear a thud, we hear people scream, they realize that Eutychus is gone, and they run downstairs, and sure enough, they find him and he's dead. Paul quits teaching, goes down and finds Eutychus, and he falls on him. And he wraps his arms around him, and he makes this declaration, hey everybody, don't be alarmed. He's alive. And I wish we had a few more verses to kind of give us some detail there, but we don't have a lot more other than they get up and they go back upstairs to break bread and for more teaching. Guarantee you Eutychus stays awake this time. But Paul teaches until daybreak. And the people leave, and they take Eutychus home, and they're greatly comforted, the Bible tells us. And I think that is an understatement, right? They know that Eutychus had literally fallen 3 stories, died, and is back to life. Now, what's the takeaway from all this? It's pretty simple. It's practical. Don't fall asleep in church. I'm kidding. I think we can actually take something from this, because as you keep reading on, maybe we see why Paul was so long-winded here. You see, he's going to reach out to the elders in the church of Ephesus and basically tell them his goodbye because he's going to Jerusalem and wouldn't see them again. And in verse 26, he makes this really amazing statement. He says, therefore I declare to you today that I am innocent of the blood of any of you, for I have not hesitated to proclaim to you the whole will of God. You see, Paul knew what his mission, his calling was in life, was to preach the good news, to preach the gospel, to teach the will of God to others, to everyone that he came in contact with. That was his calling, his desire. He wanted to follow that with everything that he had. And maybe that's why in Troas, he knew he had a short time, but he said, I'm not going to hesitate. I'm going to give you everything I got. I'm going to make it as clear as possible. So I'm going to teach for as long as it takes. And that's just what Paul did. That's who he was. And so when I read that, I'm challenged, and maybe you are today too. And those people that are in our circles that we come in contact with, a couple of things that we could ask ourselves. Number one, do they know that we're Christ followers? Like by the way we live our lives, by the words that we speak, do they know? And then at the end of the day, have we been so clear with our words that we could say the same thing Paul said? Like if we were to never see a person from our business again, would we say, I don't hesitate to leave because I know that I've shared clearly the gospel of Jesus with them? May you be challenged by that today. And one little piece of advice for you. We can't wait to see you at church Sunday. Stay awake.